Alright, welcome back. Welcome to the second part of this creative video board in Laravel and VueJS tutorials series. And in this part we're going to create our first HTTP controller to handle creating and viewing posts. So to get this up and running, we left off right here, displaying all the posts we currently have in our database, which we'll just remove, and then when we refresh we should see our Lumen 5.6 message again. So first of all, we want to head to our bootstrap/app.php file and just copy this down, because we want to add we want to group all of our API routes under the /API prefix. So what we'll just do is we'll copy this down, add a prefix of API, and then we'll say instead of web.php we'll call this api.php. So now if we create a api.php right here, and then maybe copy the contents of this over in here just to kind of start it, and then we should see, if we change maybe this over to hello world, if you refresh this now we should see hello world. So that is working correctly, and what we want to do now is maybe create our first controller to handle creating a post. So we're going to head into our app http controllers directory and just create a new file, and we'll call this post controller.php, and then we'll say we'll add a namespace to this, and then we'll extend this class to the base controller we got into our, so this controller right here, and then we'll add a method to it. So we'll say public function create post, and then for now we'll just return response hey. So then if we just create a post route for this, so we'll say post/post/create, and then we'll say we want this to be mapped to the post controller at the create post method. So then if we head into our postman and we copy this URL here, and we'll switch this over from get to post, then we'll say api/post/create, and then we'll see hey. So that has worked. So what we then want to do is we want to validate this request. We want to validate the data we sent through. So we need a title, a body, and a YouTube ID. So let me first delete this selected row, and then we'll just validate this request. So first we have to pull the request in, which is under Illuminate HTTP. So we'll add this request in, and we'll say in here we'll pass an array, and we'll say the key. So we want to validate title, and we want to say required. We want to set this as a minimum length of 3 and a maximum of maybe 60. And then for the post body, we might not want to make this required, but we do want to give this a maximum length of 1000 characters. And for the YouTube ID, we'll just say required for now. So if we then submit this off again, we should see a bunch of validation errors. Yeah. So here we see an annulled exception, so we'll add this in try catch. Also so we can handle this more gracefully. So we'll say validation exception. And then we'll put this in the try block. And then we'll say right here, return response JSON. And we'll say our success equals false. And then we'll say errors, errors. So if we now submit this off, we should see success equals false, so we can quickly check that in the front end. And we see the errors, which are, we have title is required and the YouTube ID is required. And then just to make this a little bit more yeah, a little better, we just add 422 as a status code. So obviously what can now happen is someone can submit a URL or something that isn't a YouTube, that doesn't contain a YouTube ID. So what we want to do is we want to head over to our app.php again and just check that we have this enabled, and then we want to head into our app service provider, which is under providers, app service provider. And in here we want to extend our validation rule so we can check if the submitted URL does actually contain a YouTube ID. So I have this snippet here which I'm just going to copy, and we have to pull in this validator. So we'll pull in the facade, and then this says extend, so we add our YouTube rule, then we check the value for this regex query, and then then it just returns the count matches is greater than 0. So if this doesn't have any matches, this will say, sorry, this doesn't look like a valid YouTube URL. So then if we head over to a YouTube ID again, and we'll say YouTube rule. So now if we say come over here and say YouTube ID, you want to call this YouTube URL actually. Then we'll say something like something random, and then this doesn't look like a valid YouTube URL. But if we just quickly head over to YouTube and maybe get something in trending. So yeah, what is trending? Something World Cup. So I'll just grab this, put it in here, and then that error should go. Yeah, that error did indeed go. So now we have the YouTube URL available. So now we know that this is a valid URL actually. So what we can do in here is we can actually create it in a database. So what we'll do is we'll just pull this app models post thing in, and then we'll say create. Actually, first we need to grab this YouTube ID using that same query we have from before. So if you just grab this, like request input YouTube URL, then we'll just die dump on matches just to quickly see how that looks. Oh, we still need to add the title field. We'll say FIFA. So we have the first item in the array is the YouTube ID, as we can see right here. So when we create this entry in the database, we'll just say title request input title. Body is going to be our request input body. And then we want to add our YouTube ID, which is going to be matches, the first item in the array of matches. I'll just assign this to a variable, just so we can respond with it in this request. So we'll say that success equals true. And then we'll say the post. So if we submit this off now, we should have a success. So we'll see success equals true, the title is FIFA, we'll say a YouTube ID right here, and then we see a bunch of other timestamps and the ID. So if we refresh this, we do indeed have this in the database. Body is empty, so yeah, we might want to add this to null actually, just to make things a little bit more tidy, but yeah, we'll leave it for now. So now what we want to do, we might want to list like the last 100 posts we got. So we'll say get posts, and then what we'll do is we'll duplicate this down. We'll change it to get, and then we'll just say posts, and then we'll change this method over to get posts. and then we simply just do posts equal post order by rated at. We want the latest one. We want the latest post first, so we'll say descending. We only want the last 100, and then we'll fetch them. And then we'll just simply say status or success. Success is true, and then the post will be just the posts. So if we then quickly check, in postman we'll say posts, and then we submit this off, and then we'll see these are our posts. So if we just add like another one, FIFA2, same URL though, so we'll just add another one and we'll say post again, and then we have 2 items in here. So, and then we'll also see that this title of FIFA2 is newer than this one. So that's it for this part of the series on how to make this video board app in Laravel and VueJS. We have made some progress with the API, and in the next episode we will look at how to make the comments part of the API. So thank you for watching, and I'll hope to see you next time. Bye.